This Friday betting preview edition of Pucks Across Borders on Total Apex Sports and Sports Addict Live, brought to you by the one, the only First Round Collectibles. Right now, with our promo code Sports Addict, get 10% off whatever sports card you want in the entire First Round Collectibles store. They have an ongoing sale up to 50% off dozens and dozens of cards. And with our promo code Sports Addict, not only do you get 10% off of regular priced items, but sales items as well. Hockey, football, basketball, baseball, wrestling, boxing, whatever you want. I promise you they have it. Go to firstroundcollectibles.com today. Use promo code Sports Addict for 10% off your order. That's the promo code Sports Addict for 10% off your order. That's the number one. STRoundCollectibles.com, firstroundcollectibles.com. First Round Collectibles, sports cards for sports fans.
Yeah. Let's go. We just gotta go hard. I go the hardest. I bring the pain. Not what you used to. It's all part of the game. Yeah, I just gotta go hard. I just gotta go hard. Go hard. Go hard. Yeah. Yeah, the beast back.
And welcome to this Friday NHL betting preview edition of Pucks Across Borders on Sports Addict Live, and of course, as always, Total Apex Sports, brought to you by First Round Collectibles. Good to be back. Been a hit or miss week for us, mostly miss. Listen, man, life gets busy. You've had a busy week. I've had a busy week. We had to scale back a little bit. We haven't been on since Monday night. But we are back and we're ready to talk some hockey. Only two games on the card tonight. The Winnipeg Jets are in Pittsburgh and the Buffalo Sabres are in Anaheim. We will break down both of them and talk about not just last night, but we haven't been here all week, man. We got lots to break down, lots to discuss, lots of news in the NHL throughout the week, and we'll talk about it all. But first, as always, Andre, how you doing, bro? It's good to see you. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute. I'm doing pretty well. I must say, it's good that we got a break. It gave Brady a chance to regroup. He was talking a lot of stuff before the Rangers played the Canucks. And just like we said would happen, the Rangers beat the Canucks. But I did, as you know, I'm going to tell the world, I went to the Colorado Avalanche game.
Yeah, you were there.
Against the Washington Capitals. I went with my tremendous girlfriend from Colorado. It was Hockey Fights Cancer night. So I'm wearing the shirt. I hope nobody out there watching is pro-cancer, because if you're pro-cancer, I'm anti-you. F cancer. But it was awesome. I know everybody does it, but it's still, special to celebrate, be a part of.
Yeah.
Kind of humbling as well. But yeah, I just wanted to give a special shout out to the NHL, the Capitals organization as well, for putting on Hockey Fights Cancer night last night, handing out shirts for everybody, having stations where you could sign your shirts, your towels, whatever, dedicate them to people in your life or just the world in general that have been affected by cancer. So yeah, I think that was important to get out there. My little time.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I mean, on that note, they've been doing it all week. Pretty much every game that I've watched has been doing this all week, and really, really great initiative. It's funny, not funny, but yesterday I was watching the Caps and Avs play, and I saw the presentation. And a couple nights ago, I was watching the Edmonton-Ottawa game, and they did a presentation in Ottawa as well. And when it's funny, because my wife, she watches these games with me, not because she wants to, but because we live in a small apartment and there's one TV in the house and she really has no choice. And these presentations always, they're tearjerkers, right? And they get you. And they're tearjerkers for everybody. And when you have kids, there was on whatever night it was, Tuesday, I guess, the Ottawa game, or was it Wednesday? Whatever night it was. and they have the mom and the dad out there dropping the puck with their daughter or their son who has cancer. And you're just watching this like, oh my goodness, like really, really hard stuff that all these families go through, whether you're young or you're old. So, or older, I should say. So yeah, it's an excellent initiative that the NHL does, and excellent to see these situations getting highlighted. And obviously do what you can. You can go, I believe it's just hockeyfightscancer.com, but if you go to the NHL.com, and you'll be able to find links and support wherever you can. Even I know like local hospitals here where you can donate, and wherever you can donate, definitely do what you can. As far as the products on the ice, we can talk through quickly last night. Just go through the scores, and then we can kind of go through whatever you want to talk about throughout the week. The Utah Hockey Club are in Boston, the brand new and improved Boston Bruins. The post Jim Montgomery era begins. We will talk about that a little bit later. Boston wins 1-0. The Ottawa Senators lose again to a team that was on a back-to-back, second straight night that you play a good team, but a team on a second half of a back-to-back. This was interesting. They lose 3-2, outshoot Vegas 40-32. Real quickly on this one, what I thought was interesting was Montreal beats Edmonton 3-0. The next night, Edmonton goes to Ottawa and wins. Vegas loses to Toronto 3-0. Next night, goes to Ottawa and wins. Yes, Edmonton's a good team. Definitely not, well, but a good team nonetheless. And Vegas, who's been a great team all year long, but has struggled on the road, both games that you should win. And they didn't win either of them. Moving on, the Islanders lose to the Red Wings in a riveting 2-1 performance. Just two of the most boring teams in hockey right now. Let's just call it what it is. But the Red Wings win 2-1. The Devils beat the Hurricanes 4-2. Very strong performance by New Jersey. They find themselves at the top, tied at the top of the division with the Carolina Hurricanes. Next was the game that you referenced, that you were in attendance for, the Avalanche beating Washington 2-1. The Lightning, oh my goodness, the Lightning and the Blue Jackets, who are scoring still as we speak. It hasn't stopped. 7-6. The Blue Jackets beat the Lightning. And I think with this game, you know, we've seen the Blue Jackets do this to good teams all year long. It's one thing to lose to Columbus by a large score or allowing a bunch of goals, but like when the Leafs lost, what's worse? The Leafs lost to Columbus 6-2, but Toronto was never even in that game. They didn't even show up. That was just Columbus's night from start to finish. What's worse, losing to Columbus badly or being up on Columbus 3-0 in the first period? I'm pretty sure. Yeah, within 10 minutes, the game was 3-0 Tampa, and then losing 7-6. I don't know which one's worse. The Sharks lose to the Blues in overtime, 3-2. Celebrini with some excellent last-minute heroics, saving the game, getting it tied up with 9 seconds left. I believe it was Wenberg, yes, who scored the game-tying goal with 9 seconds left, ultimately losing in overtime 3-2. The Blackhawks beating the Panthers 3-1. The Rangers losing to Calgary 3-2. And the Wild beating the Oilers 5-3. All right, could be from last night or whatever you want to talk about from the week that was. Andre, what do you got, man? What's your takeaway or takeaways?
Yeah, there's going to be multiple here. Fittingly, two teams that are about to play each other tomorrow. Calgary Flames.
Yep.
Don't look now. 3-game winning streak, all at home. They have a 4-game winning streak at home overall, but 3 in a row this week, or I guess since last Friday, all in their barn. 2-0 over Nashville, 2-1 over the Islanders, 3-2 over the Rangers last night. They're playing tremendous defensive hockey, especially at home. Going to be really put to the test on Saturday, but they've put themselves in a nice position. Again, still early, but 25 points, 11-6-3, second in the Pacific. Their provincial rivals kind of struggling, opening the door for them. The Kings, always good, not great. That's a possibility. The Canucks played pretty well, just a little bit behind. They're competing right now. Not just competing, they're kind of thriving. They're up there. If they could figure things out on the road, they'll be fine. They've kind of restored some of that momentum from early in the year, though, taking advantage of a lackluster start from a lot of teams. And this Minnesota game, that'll say a lot about them. I think that's a really big test for them. I think it's going to be, especially with the way they're stopping opponents from scoring right now, I think it's going to say a lot about who this team is moving forward. And if they get that win, especially before hitting the road, I think it's going to be huge for them. I think it's going to be a huge momentum boost. And it's too early to think about the playoffs for a lot of these teams, but maybe we should start, trying to pencil them into a playoff spot now if they have a good road trip after that wild game. So Calgary, they kind of caught my eye this week, kind of impressive. Minnesota's the other team, obviously. We keep saying, they're going to come back down to earth. They're going to, they're not going to sustain this, blah, blah, blah. They're 13-3-3. They just keep winning games. They just keep scoring. For them, they end a road trip in Calgary on Saturday, so kind of a reversal there. But they homer away. They've just been getting the job done. They started 1-2. We forget that. They've just not lost games in a row. They've just beaten everybody on their schedule. The Wild are pretty impressive, and this is a team where before the season began, we were like, if they stay healthy, they can make noise. They can be a playoff team easily. I think they're proving that right now. So Minnesota, Calgary, both playing well. Both deserve a shout out. Meeting up on Saturday. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a nice measuring stick for both teams.
Yeah, 100%. I think what is impressive to me, both these teams, we know, I would say, I think, I'll check this out right now. I'm pretty sure on FanDuel, and I'll double check, but I'm fairly sure, yeah, Kirill Kaprizov at plus 290. He is the betting favorite to win the Hart Trophy right now, which I just think is terrific. Like, I've called him this whole season so far, I've called him the most underrated superstar in the NHL. You watch this guy play, and it's just like must-watch TV, man. This guy is absolutely brilliant. He's just a great player and does everything, a little bit of everything. Right now, he just to get my stats for sure. Yeah, he has 13 goals, 21 assists, 34 points on the year. He's a plus 16, which is just terrific. I believe he's 1 point back of McKinnon for the lead in points. Just a terrific hockey player, but the depth, sneaky, like a lot of really good depth. And what I'm excited for when it comes to the Minnesota Wild, and we've talked about this many times, but the Parise and the Sutter buyouts, that $12 million cap hit finally comes off the books next summer. So after this season, they will finally have $12 million where they could play with. There might be like $1.5 million or a little bit that is still on there, but for the most part, they're going to be completely financially cleared up in order to make some moves and to build this team. So we'll see what happens as the season goes on, but the future is super bright there. All I got to do is lock up Kaprizov, which if him and his agent, I'm sure, are not looking to sign anything until the season's over, because the way he's going, that number could be very, very high. And we've talked about this before, but specifically, with that division, what they're doing right now, like you said, man, we've been saying, and not necessarily we, but just the media in general has been saying that they're going to drop off, they're going to do this, going to do that. Well, I'll tell you what, right now, 13-3-3, 29 points, only 3 points back of the Winnipeg Jets, 5 points up on the Dallas Stars. They have 19 games played right now, which just going to cheat and use my calculator because who can do quick math? They have 63 games left, which means that let's say they go 32 and 31. I know there's a loser point in there and blah, blah, blah. But if they're 32 and 31, 32 times 2, obviously I should do that without a calculator, is 64. If they, and I know I'm doing my quick math on the fly, but if they go 500 for the rest of the season, they end up with 93 points, which should be just enough to get into the playoffs, right? So my point is, even if they like drop off like dramatically and they're only 500 for the rest of the year, they're still probably in the playoffs if you factor in the loser point and all that kind of stuff. So for Minnesota, they've already basically put themselves in the playoffs, which is just a huge sigh of relief for that team who struggled to get in. And of course, a lot like Toronto, Minnesota is one of those teams that, and like Winnipeg for that matter, what can you do for me when you get to the playoffs? But this is an excellent season by them so far. And I know I'm a little long-winded here, but just to touch on your Calgary point, listen, man, you know how it is in this business. We all say a lot of things, whether the two guys on this show or on other shows, we all say a lot of things in the summer, right? And in September. And we have all of our predictions and we say all these things. And a lot of them we get wrong. That's what happens, which means when you say something that you're right about, I got to pump my tires here. What did I say about the Calgary Flames? This team is too talented. Everyone was putting this team in the grave before the season even started. Like they're going to get like a lottery pick or something. Now, I don't know if this team's going to keep playing the way they're playing. I don't know if they're going to make it to the playoffs. But this team was always too talented to be this, you know, like 28th place team in the National Hockey League. They're 11-6-3 right now, 25 points, one back of the division lead. Their goaltending, Dustin Wolf, has been terrific. The guy cannot lose on home ice. He had an excellent game last night against your New York Rangers. And I know that they beat the Islanders the other night, and it's not a big whatever. But that game against the Islanders, their team couldn't score. And he found a way to keep them in the game, and they find a way to win. This team right now, if Wolf keeps playing the way that he's playing, it feels like unders are always the pick when Calgary Flames are playing. It feels like they can't really score a bunch, but they're not letting in a lot of goals either. And it just feels like this team is too good to just go away quietly. Now, the last thing I'll say, and to my point, 2.6 goals per game, 23rd in the league, 2.65 goals against, 8th in the league. So that under when Calgary plays is basically the play. Now, the last thing I'll say is a plea with general manager Craig Conroy. Watch the Philadelphia Flyers and do what they did last year. I'm not saying that you want to be the Philadelphia Flyers, but what the Philadelphia Flyers did last year, everybody pegged them, and they were a rebuilding team last year. But they outperformed what their projections were, right? They were in a playoff spot for the majority of the year last year, Philadelphia was. And they decided that they're not going to add to the roster, that they're just going to, and they traded some key pieces, Sean Walker and others, but they didn't do anything to bolster their playoff chances. And that's what I think the Calgary Flames should do. They shouldn't necessarily trade away key pieces, but don't get all jacked up and make moves that's going to make your team better. Just let it ride. See what happens. You're ahead of schedule as it is right now. Don't get carried away and just see what happens in the future. All right. Earlier in the week, we got a couple ways we can go here, man. Nashville just keeps digging their hole deeper. Ottawa continues to be extremely frustrating. And Jim Montgomery got fired. Now, those are 3 talking points, all of them negative. I'm sure there are positive things to talk about, but why would we talk about the positive when there's negativity staring us right in the face? I'll give you the direction next. We're going to get to all of it, but what do you want to talk about next, man? We got Boston Bruins firing a coach with a .710 winning percentage, by the way. Do I have to get on my soapbox again talking about the firings that go on in the NHL? Ottawa and Nashville, there's stuff to talk about there. But what do you want to talk about next?
It's got to be one of those teams wearing yellow. I'll let you pick the poison from there. I guess we can slowly shift east, right? And go Nashville next. Yeah. Let's talk about Nashville. Get it started, please. So Nashville. Set the scene.
We were doing the pre-show. And we were talking about what we wanted to talk about, and you made the very astute point that we've talked about Nashville a lot, and I completely agree with you. Don't really need to talk about them much more, except the way that they lost the other night. Now you get shut out to the Seattle Kraken. Not as bad as it really seems. Joey Daccord is just like, I don't even know what you would consider him. Is he a backup goalie anymore? I'm pretty sure him and Grubauer are basically like tandem now. One of the more expensive tandems in the NHL once Joey Daccord's contract kicks in. Okay, so there you go. It's right. He's not a backup.
I'll just leave it.
Yeah, and he's just a terrific goalie, man. And Nashville hasn't been scoring all year long, so it's fair to pick on that trend. But Joey Daccord is a phenomenal goaltender, so there's no real shame in it. But what sticks out to me for Nashville, and I know this was a couple nights ago, but the way that game started against Seattle on Wednesday, when you already have the season from hell and your game starts that way, for those of you who missed it, it's the same in baseball and other sports. You have to submit your opening lineup, like your starting 5 guys before the game starts. Well, Philip Forsberg was on the game sheet, and Steven Stamkos is the one who was on the ice. And Seattle immediately caught it, and right when the puck dropped, they were screaming and yelling at the refs. The refs caught on to it. Nashville's awarded a 2-minute penalty. It brings up a whole other side note. The refs do not have the responsibility to call this play out. It's solely on the opposite team. If the opposite team notices, then the refs will give a penalty. But it's not the responsibility of the refs to notice it and to give a penalty, which raises a question that we won't answer today. How many times has this happened in the NHL? And it's just never caught by the other team. I'm very curious by that. But and another side note, apparently Dan Bylsma, when he was coaching the AHL affiliate of the Seattle Kraken, he did this like twice last year. So apparently he's like a nerd when it comes to this. And don't do this against Dan Bylsma because he'll call you out. But yeah, like your season's already going down the toilet more and more every day. And you start the game with a 2-minute penalty that is 100% unavoidable. Apparently, there's reports that they're blaming it on Stamkos wears 91, Forsberg wears 9, and so they got it mixed up or whatever. I don't know, man. Like, you're an NHL roster. Like, how you can't confuse numbers. Like, that's something for me to do, like a high school dropout who never passed grade 10 math. Like, I can get away with that. You can't. Now, they ended up killing off the penalty, but they still lose the game 3-0. It's just, I don't want to see a coach get fired. He's a very good coach, and I'm not even saying that he should get fired, but you're not doing yourself any favors when you pull a move like that.
Yeah, I'm not buying that. Listen, man, we've seen so many interviews pregame with all the boys sitting at their locker. You got the guy reading off the lineup card, and they all clap and whatever whenever they say someone's name, whatever junk they do. They knew who was starting. They messed up. You're pros. You mess up. Don't blame the number. Blame yourselves. Look inward. You weren't focused. You clearly haven't been focused all season long because look at where you are in the standings. Last in the Central, you're tied with the Chicago Blackhawks. You have a worse goal differential than the Chicago Blackhawks. It's just been that type of season for Nashville. Worst in the league. Right now, they would be on a fast track to the number 1 draft pick. And we talked about this road trip in particular. So important. 6 games, make or break your season. You entered at 5-9-2. You got the Colorado Avalanche. They have not been playing their best hockey in the tail end of 2024. You got the Edmonton Oilers, who have not been playing well in 2024, at least the beginning of the season. The Calgary Flames, they had just lost before you played them. Really on the strength of goaltending and defense. That's all they do. They're not really a scoring threat. Got Vancouver. It's a good team. And then you got Seattle. So a solid team. It's a beatable team. It's another team where they're not really scoring much. You proceed to lose 4 of those 5 games on the road trip. Yeah. You enter at 5-9-1. You leave at 6-11-3. And really, the offense didn't show up in Vancouver. That's why they actually got 2 points, that 5-3 win. But otherwise, they got shut out by Seattle. They got shut out by Calgary. Probably the 2 most winnable games on there. You're not going to beat the Colorado Avalanche or Edmonton Oilers scoring 2 goals. And they only scored 2 goals against both of those teams. They're a mess. They're a disaster. It's not about the numbers on the back of the jersey. It's not. It's just nobody in that locker room is locked in. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the X's and O's. I don't know if the losses are making them spiral. I don't know if they need to go to a U2 concert. I don't have the answers to the Nashville Predators, but I can tell you what I'm seeing. And I'm seeing a team that is tied with the Chicago Blackhawks for the worst record in the NHL.
Yeah.
And it's not a mistake. And actually, the Blackhawks have been better. So,
dude, well, first of all, I love your rant. Absolutely beautiful. Second of all, complete side note, let's bring some positivity into this. My son, 2 years old, does this cute thing now when I cough. He asks me if I'm okay. It's just such a beautiful thing. Nashville Predators, they're not okay. And it's a problem. 6-11-3. They have played 20 games so far this season. The same experiment, okay? They have 62 games left. So let's say they go 500, right? That's 62 points. If they win, that's 60 points. If they win, no, I was right before. That's 62. That's, wow. If they win 31 of their next 62 games, that is 62 points. I'm messing this up so badly. Why? Yeah, 62 points. See, I didn't pass grade 10 math. I am allowed to do it, Nashville. You're not. But my point is, that's not going to get you into the playoffs, right? If you just play 500 from here on out, that's not going to get you in. So they got to go on another run. Now, what's interesting is, and we don't necessarily have to talk about this team, but thank you, Joe. I appreciate you. Nashville and Edmonton, and I know it's much different how this is starting, but these are 2 teams that are asking themselves to do exactly what they did last year. And that is bounce back from a really bad start and go on a crazy run. Like, we all know that the Oilers went on this crazy run last year. So did the Predators. Great. You did it last year. I'm hearing this a lot. Well, they did it last year That's a horrible reference to put yourself in a position to do it again. Like what the Predators did last year and what the Oilers did last year was historic. It was historic for a reason. Like, you're making yourself do this again. I just don't understand it. And in retrospect, and there are other people who caught this, I was not one of them. I thought the moves they made in the offseason were really good. I thought bringing Brady Shea in was terrific. I thought bringing in Stamkos and Marchessault was great. In retrospect, it was probably one move too many, right? You signed Stamkos, you brought in Brady Shea. Maybe bringing in Marchessault was one step too far. Maybe you were changing the roster too much. Whatever it is, it's awful. Like I don't know how this turns around. I would be curious. I don't know if you have it in quick grasps. I can look for it, but I would be curious to see Western Conference. Yeah, the Predators are now plus 130 to make it to the playoffs. Plus 130. Do you think that is generous? I feel like those odds are too short at this point.
I would not. At plus money, there's not a chance I would take that.
No.
You got to give me like plus 300 on this Predators team at this
least.
Point. Because what have they shown you as the worst team in the league? The fewest wins in the NHL as of today. I guess they're tied with the Sharks. What have they shown you that makes you think they can beat the Sharks, let alone beat 31 of their last 62 opponents? I mean, does that even, let me see, they have 15 points. That doesn't even get them to 81 points at this point. They're going to have to do a lot better than that to get even, let alone that, let's say 93 is the threshold for that last wildcard spot.
Well, 90, and tomorrow
they need 78 points in 62 games. Do you believe they can do that?
No, I don't.
No,
I don't. And it kind of goes the other way for me. Like, I just referenced this. Like, they already did this once last year. To do this twice in 2 years, my son, I don't know if you just hear him. He just said, "What? No way." That's right. He's 2 years old, and he knows that this is ridiculous to ask his team to do it again. He watches these games with me. He knows what's up. They play the Jets tomorrow, and the Jets are the Jets, man. They got the best goaltending in the league, one of the best goaltending situations in the league. They are the deepest team in the NHL right now as far as production per line goes. There's just I don't see how this turns around quickly. Monday they play the Devils in New Jersey. Tuesday they don't play. Wednesday, let's see what they have on Wednesday. Do they play on Wednesday? They play the Flyers on Wednesday. So maybe that, but so your next two games, you just lose to a Kraken team that is good, but you should beat the Kraken, in my opinion, if you're the Predators that you should be. Now you got the Jets tomorrow. Then you get the Devils on Monday. I just don't see how this turns around for them at any time here coming up.
You know what I think happened? I think they got rid of a proven winner. They traded a proven winner for a flashy guy. Well, I guess not traded directly, but the way the money worked is kind of what happened. Ryan McDonough, everywhere he goes, the team he's on wins. I'm not attributing it solely to him.
Yeah.
That would be very biased on my part, and I am biased as is when it comes to Mac. But everywhere he goes, he genuinely, like, he's on a winning team. He was on the Predators. They won. He's in Tampa now. They're winning. The Predators are not. I'm not going to say it's solely because of that, but I think when you get rid of veteran leaders, you get rid of proven winners, you get rid of guys that aren't maybe flashy, but they have substance, especially in a sport like hockey. This isn't the NBA. I mean, he's not Lamar Jackson, just to bring it to other sports. You know, unless you're a Connor McDavid, unless you're a Kirill Kaprizov, Nico Hischier, you know, those type of guys, Kale McCarr, you're not single-handedly dragging a team to 500. That's the bottom line. And
no, and to your point, like McDonough, he's not one of these players that offensively is going to blow you away, but he's just a super steady defenseman. And that right now, I think you're absolutely right. I think that the hey buddy. Yeah, here. Okay, buddy. Just parenting live. It's all good. I just think that they, in retrospect, they've always been a team that's been built from the net out. And I think that they overplayed their hand here, trying to bring in too many offensive pieces. Listen, Brady Shea is a terrific defenseman. He's on my fantasy team, which is he might not be. We'll see what happens. But I just think that they went away from their identity that's been long proven to be successful by going too offensive. And it hasn't played out because there's not scoring goals. So we'll see what happens. Now, to kind of segue the conversation, Andrew Burnett, shouldn't he be fired? I don't know. But there was a coach who was fired, and we can kind of segue this even a little bit more. Did you know 2 years ago, so not last year, but the year before, Jim Montgomery was nominated.
you good?
Yeah, I'm good. My son pulled out my headphones. And now he's freaking out. It's okay, buddy. The sound's all gone now. Jim Montgomery was coach of the year. All right.
Yes.
Do you know who? Do you know? Absolutely deservedly. Do you know who the nominees were that year, 2 summers ago?
I'm tempted to say it really doesn't matter because just how obviously what happened that season. Off the top of my head, if I had to guess based on like who the best teams were, I don't know. That's a great question.
Was one of them. No.
Was it
Lindy
like
Ruff was one of them.
22-20? No, it couldn't. It was it. That was the Devils head coach. That was
Lindy Ruff.
Lindy Ruff. Okay, because he got fired. Yeah, this freaking league, man. In the Western Conference, the Avs were the top seed. No.
Yeah, it wasn't Bednar.
So,
he's still there.
It wasn't. I'm trying to think of who's gotten fired. I'm assuming it's someone who's gotten fired. It wasn't Gallant. They always get rid of people. Who was Vegas's coach? They've changed coaches since then.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Well, actually, no, because that was the year they won the cup. So it wouldn't have been Vegas. I can't remember who it was now. My brain's explained. I can't. The point is, all 3 of those guys have been fired. That's the point. I can't remember who that third guy is now either. It's escaped me. But I know it was Lindy Ruff was one, and I know that Jim Montgomery was the one who won it. And they've both been fired since. And there's a third guy there. If anyone knows, put it in the chat. I knew it. It left my brain. I don't know if you found it since.
Dave Hextall, Seattle.
Yes. Dave Hextall from Seattle. Right. Yep. Yeah, that's right. That's who it was. So they've all 3 of those guys have been fired. That just shows you. I heard a stat the other day. So Spencer Carberry was brought over to Washington the beginning of last season from the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was the Leafs assistant coach for years, and he was brought over to Washington. I heard this stat the other day that Spencer Carberry, this is his second season coaching the Washington Capitals. Second. He is the 14th longest tenured coach in the NHL. More than half of the league has been coaching for less than a year and 2 months. That's crazy, man.
We complain about job security. Jeez.
Dude, and like I can complain about like I think a big part of this is the strictness of the salary cap. Like I think that can be a big thing to play in this. But like listen, normally, and this is all coming to a point of mine here. Normally, I would say, and if you've been watching this show since we started it last year, you've heard me say this before. Most of these coaches who get fired do not deserve to be fired, and it's ridiculous. It's the roster construction or it's the roster not playing up to their capability.
Yeah.
I gotta say though, and that seems to be accurate with Jim Montgomery. If you're talking about the fact that he literally 2 years ago brought his team to the most successful regular season in National Hockey League history. His winning percentage is over 700%, or sorry, 70%. 700% would be something else. Over 70%. So on the surface, that's correct. However, I'm curious to know more about this as it begins to leak out. Players like David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand are saying the right things right now. They're saying how much they loved him and how he's a respected coach and they respect him and all this stuff. I think that he overplayed his hand with his superstars, bro. Like, he benched David Pastrnak twice in one weekend, one of them being for an entire third period in a game in which they won. Barely, but they won it. There are many, like there's like 2 or 3, maybe 4 moments throughout the season where we've seen him chewing out Brad Marchand on the bench. And the first one, you saw like Brad Marchand being a professional and taking it. This last one, you see him like chirping back to his coach and patting the C on his jersey, being like, hey man, like I'm the captain. Like, why are you talking to me like this in front of everybody? I think there is a point, and we've seen this, to bring it back to Toronto, just because this is the team that I follow the closest. Like, we've seen this where there's large stretches where Craig Berube has, given it to Austin Matthews on the bench or has benched Nylander. But there has to be that, give and take. And I feel like he's overplayed his hand with how harsh he's been with his superstars, who, by all admittedly, have not been playing well. But like Brad Marchand had 3 surgeries this summer. 3? He's my age?
It's no spring chicken.
No, dude. Like, thank you for that. I guess like neither of us are. But you know what I mean? Like, and the other part of this that's kind of off topic but on topic is we can talk and we can do this. Go through every single coach that was fired in the last 2 years. And I promise you that 90% of them had a horrible goaltender performance right there alongside their team losing. Like, the easiest one to go back to is Minnesota Wild last year with Philip Gustafson having a horrendous start to his season. Jeremy Swayman, man. I said this when he got signed the extension. This guy is not going to be good, and he hasn't. Like, don't get me wrong. He's not the only one to blame there. The defensive, everyone's been playing awful, but they can't get a save with Jeremy Swayman in net right now. And Korpisalo was the goaltender last night in the 1-0 win against Utah. So anyway, that's my rant. But Jim Montgomery, I don't think statistically he should have been fired. I think that he's done enough to buy himself some time here. But the way that he's been handling his superstars, I don't know. It just feels like he pushed them just one notch too far.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of problems in Boston. We talked to just, texting, but they've obviously been trying to avoid a rebuild for quite a few years. Understandable. When you're a market like that, your original 16 like that, you try to keep it going, whatever. It's tough to retool on the fly. No question about that. That record-setting season 2 years ago, first round exit, obviously disappointing. They haven't really recovered since then. At the same time, with hindsight, we know what this Panthers team is since that point. Probably not the worst exit of all time. This isn't Tampa losing to the Blue Jackets in 2019 or whatever, where it was just like a one-off deal of underperformance after a historic season. They lost to a Panthers team that won the East 2 years in a row, won a cup the next year. That's currently one of the best teams in the league still. So felt awful at the time. I have a ton of friends who are Bruins fans. They were devastated. They didn't want to, even with the Celtics still in the playoffs, they had no desire to talk sports whatsoever. Like, it stung. The Panthers ended up just being a juggernaut. Nobody knew it yet. They ran into a waking giant. I think with Boston, though, this, again, roster construction is a huge part of it. I think part of this dates back even to the Claude Julien days. And I don't think they messed up his tenure at all. He had a nice long run, took him to the playoffs after a couple of years off, won a cup, got back to the cup, missed the playoffs a couple of years, gone back to the playoffs, underperforming 1 year, fire him, bring in Bruce Cassidy in midseason, boom, back to the playoffs, make it to the cup a few years later, right? Bruce Cassidy had a good tenure there. They let Bruce Cassidy go after a first-round exit. I think they were fourth in the Atlantic that year, not only, but like 96 points or whatever, 51-win team, but they lost in the first round. Bruce Cassidy, it was the third year in a row they didn't get back to the cup final. And even though, that weird COVID bubble year in between, I guess they were just underperforming with Cassidy. Let him go. He wins a cup of Vegas the next year.
Yep.
I think they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle by switching from Montgomery. And I'm not going to say it's the wrong move. I think Montgomery very clearly lost that team in the locker room.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think there's been a level of impatience since that they missed the playoffs in 2014, 2015. Just that organization where it's like, okay, we had Marchand, we had Chara, we had Bergeron, we have Pasternak now, Coyle, and Brandon Carlo's been there a few years now. I'm not going to say he's like a star or anything, but like there's just guys who are good players, winning players, have been there for a while. They have a culture, they have a core, and it's not even getting them past the second round at this point. I don't want to knock you down or anything, but a lot of sentiment I get from Bruins fans. One of my best friends is a Bruins fan. We can beat the Leafs and that's it in the playoffs. And it, like, I'm not trying to punch down on you.
Fair, dude. What am I going to say?
So I don't know. There's a lot of impatience, right or wrong, with that organization right now. And I think they're just trying to catch lightning in a bottle here. I think getting rid of Montgomery is the right move. I think that maybe just taking a year or two to properly rebuild again. They did it after the Torek and I guess O'Connell for the last few games of that season. It got them, there was a Sullivan and Lewis between there, but it got them Claude Julien. It got them a ton of playoff appearances in a row, got them 2 Stanley Cup appearances and the trophy. Cassidy, his leash wasn't as long as Julian's. He got them to a cup. He got Vegas a cup the year after he got fired. He might have gotten that team to a cup again in 22-23. Obviously, we're using hindsight here, but there needs to be some level of patience in whether or not Sacco stays. I think that's how you pronounce his name, so I hope I'm not wrong. Whether or not he stays or he's a bridge, whoever comes in next, I think, needs to be given a chance to build with a team because they need a new core at this point, or at least a non-Marchand captain. It's time to move on. It's time to be Pasternak's team, I think. And I think they need that chance to grow. So I hope whoever the next coach is gets a couple years, even if they don't make the playoffs, to just establish something in Boston again. Or maybe not, because I really don't want them to win. But for the sake of being optimistic for the Bruins' sake.
Yeah, and I think too, just one second, buddy. Just one second, buddy. I also think too, like to Joe's question, they've held on as long as they've could and delayed the inevitable. The Penguins now. That's how some teams do it. Not every team though. Like we've seen a lot of teams who kind of pulled the trigger maybe too quickly. But I do think that sorry, man, we're live here. My son is losing his mind. I do think that this has been something that has been in the works for a while. Like even the year that they went on that historic season and they won all those games and they lost to Florida in the first round, that was a season that a lot of people thought that they were going to take a major like step back, right?
Yeah.
And even like last year, I was one of them who thought that they were going to take a major step back last year. And they ended up being fine and making it to the playoffs. And yes, haha, beating the Leafs. They have their own issues. It's not that big of a thing. And then, this year with Jim Montgomery, we talked about this on this show, and this has been well documented that if they didn't, because they were beating the Leafs 3-1, right, in that series, and it went to Game 7. And there were lots of conversations that this was going to happen. If the Leafs won Game 7, he was getting fired. They didn't. It was pushed down the road. And then there was discussion of, and I mean, Don Sweeney, the GM for the Bruins, he admitted the day that they let Jim Montgomery go, he admitted that we've been talking about an extension, but we couldn't come. So they were literally just recently talking about extending him, and then they couldn't reach a deal. What's happened has happened, and now he got let go. So listen, Joe Sacco, he was a head coach. He was the head coach, I think, for Colorado for a while. Wasn't working out. He's been on the Bruins assistant coaching staff for a long time. I don't know if this has been all with Boston, but he's been an assistant coach for the last 11 years. This is an established coach in the NHL, very experienced coach, former player. By all counts, this is a very highly touted guy. I can't sit here and tell you that this is going to work, but they're not hiring nobody, right? They're hiring a guy who has a very good name as a coach in this league. So we'll see what happens down the road. I will say really quickly to wrap this up, and we'll play a little game with this. We'll call this game on the fly, yay or nay. The Boston Bruins are minus 113 to make the playoffs right now. Andre, yay or nay? Are you taking that minus 113 to make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think they'd still make the playoffs.
You do, eh?
Barely. I think I think I could see them as a wild card team, yeah.
Well, put it this way, Toronto, Florida. By the way, Toronto, first in the Atlantic right now. It feels good to say that. Toronto, Florida, Carolina, New Jersey, Washington, Rangers. Those 6 teams, are you with me on this? Those 6 teams are pretty much a lock to make it. I don't think any of those 6 teams fall out. Florida, Toronto, Carolina, Devils, Washington, Rangers, right? I think those 4 teams, like Washington, I'm 100% bought in on them now. Even with Ovi out, I don't think they're falling off. I'm 100% bought in. So those 6 teams I think are in. The Tampa Bay, they have been very inconsistent themselves. I mean, they're 10-6-2. Boston's 9-9-3. Like Tampa, they've been inconsistent themselves. I don't think that they're a lock. I would take Tampa over, like Tampa is minus 410 to make the playoffs comparatively to Boston at minus 113. And I think that's appropriate. I don't know if Tampa is necessarily minus 410, but I would take Tampa over Boston to make the playoffs. But looking like the one thing Boston has going for them is Buffalo, Detroit, and Ottawa. None of those three teams want to go to the playoffs. Like they may tell you they do, but none of those three teams want to make it to the playoffs. And in the Metro, Islanders, Columbus, Philly, and Pittsburgh, I don't know which three of those want to make it. So that's the one thing Boston has going for it is nobody in the East wants it. So
yeah, I do. Yeah, the East is really a mess outside of 9 teams, and Boston barely makes the cut for those 9. I do want to say though, for Joe's just is that how the NHL does the thing? I mean, the NHL kind of has to do it, especially for certain cities, because I mean, if you're in markets like you use the Penguins for example, if the Penguins suck, no one in Pittsburgh's going to care. The Steelers are playing at the same time, you can just lock into the Steelers. You don't have to buy into that. It's very regional, especially in America when you're talking about the NHL. And for certain teams, there's just other options where if you're not winning and you're not grabbing attention, it applies to the Blackhawks with the Bears and the Bulls in town. It applies to the Penguins, obviously, with the Steelers. I think with the Kings, obviously, they share a building with the freaking Lakers. So it's hard to fight with them. The Dodgers obviously just won the World Series. They're always a good team. You kind of have to cling to success for as long as you can. And because 16 teams make it, 8 each conference, you have a better chance of making the playoffs anyway. So it is how they do things, for better or worse. It's really tough to say we're going to go full-fledged rebuild in the NHL because there's always a chance to make the playoffs, especially with the nature of puck luck. And you kind of have to fight for your market and fight for ticket sales in your region, unless you're somewhere like Columbus where you're the only attraction in town, at least for a pro sports team. So I know they have an MLS squad, but that's kind of the deal with that. Washington, we didn't think they were going to go full rebuild, retool. Well, I guess we thought they were going to go retool as long as Ovi was around. They really want to get him that record, first and foremost. But also, you have a generational goal scorer. They did make the playoffs last year, whether you think it was deserved or not. They were always going to fight for at least a playoff spot until they could. Kind of the same with Pittsburgh, where you're just going to get every last run out of your Hall of Famer while you can. And to Washington's credit, even last year when they were firmly a bad team, or I'll say below average team, they had good goaltending. They were solid defensively. It was really just they had no power play. They had no scoring punch, but Ovi's finding the back of the net again. Ryan Strome is still doing his thing. They're getting contributions from a bunch of other guys. Your boy, Pierre-Luc Dubois, 3rd star of the game last night.
Got himself a goal last night.
Yeah. I'm walking down the stairs, leaving my section. I hear Pierre-Luc Dubois, 3rd star. I was like, look at that. No, they're getting your favorite guy to bet on, Connor McMichael, 12 goals, 19 points. They're getting offensive contributions I don't think anyone expected.
No.
Except for probably the people in that building. And that's kind of why they're playing well right now. But they were never going to full punt on the season. Not with Ovi still on the roster. I guess TJ Oshie's still technically on that roster, right? They have guys.
I don't think he'll be playing in the NHL again from what I've read.
Yeah.
Obviously, what do I know? But that seems to be the way.
Yeah. They have guys that while they're still around, you want to win for them. Mainly number 8, who's going to the rafters. So
well,
they're still a year or 2 away from that full rebuild.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just to add to that too, sorry to cut you off, but just to add to it, Washington, Joe, is interesting because as much as they were like that team last year, where it's how did this team get to the playoffs, right? But then in the summer, like you do your projections, right? Like, okay, who's out? Who's the easiest one to say is going to come out of the playoffs? And I think by default that can be like Washington. But again, I guess I'm just full of pride and like ego today. But I said this in September, like I like Washington, they got in the offseason as bad of a year as they had last year and still made it into the playoffs. They got better in the summer. Like they added Matt Roy. I know PLD is the most wild cardy player of all time, maybe. But I thought that they got better in the offseason. Bringing in Logan Thompson, that was like a really, really good move. Anyone who's watched this guy play, he's been a very good goalie for like Vegas for a couple of years now. Like he's a very good goaltender. So now they have one of the better tandems in the NHL between him, between MVP candidate Charlie Lindgren. So yes, Washington was heading for a retool rebuild. However, they made themselves better in the offseason. Now, Boston, they kind of did the same. I mean, Zadorov, I thought, was a really good pickup. Elias Lindholm, this is who Elias Lindholm's always been. Like, he has really high upside, but goes for long stretches where he disappears. This is kind of who he's been. I thought very poetic that he was the only player who scored in that game last night. And so it's just hard to really know, right? You do what you think you can do to make the team better in the offseason. But, and I think, to your point, Washington has a lot of unsung guys who are contributing, where Boston, their depth is who and what. Like, they can't rely on anybody for scoring right now, including Pasternak. So, it's hard to say, but I thought Washington was going to be better this year, quite simply because, like, they made themselves better this year. And now Ovi, I know he's out, but Ovi is legitimately having his best statistical start of his career. To your point, Strome has played extremely well. Connor McMichael, like they're getting a lot of value from a lot of different places. So where I see where you're going with this, Washington did make a lot of moves in the summer that made it very clear that they weren't, going, or they weren't intending to take a step back. And then you can compare that to Pittsburgh, man. Like you just said, Penguins now, Joe, in the chat. Pittsburgh, like Washington knew that they were old and did the best that they could to get younger. Pittsburgh knew that they were old and just added more old guys. And this is what you get with Pittsburgh, right? You sign a goaltender who is unproven to a crazy deal, and this is kind of what you get with Pittsburgh. But I think Washington went about it the right way. And quite frankly, oh, man, watching your son being live on YouTube is just such an adventure. It's so much fun. You can either congratulate me on being a champion, or you can judge me for my bad parenting, one or the other, and I would take both of them. But, full disclosure, like I'm a Leaf fan. I'm a Raptors fan. You're not going to hear me cry when Boston doesn't do well. I'm fine with it. I'm a Blue Jays fan. All three of my teams are in the same division with Boston teams, so I'm fine with it. But I thought that the moves they made in the offseason were good ones. I thought bringing Zadorov in was a really good move. He hasn't been a good fit. Same with Lindholm. He hasn't been a good fit. So we'll see what happens. I also think moving out Jacob Rusk, like not re-signing him, he was a really, really good depth piece. And him not being on your team now, I think is like really showing himself. And yeah, Joe, you're talking about Gensel, going back to Pittsburgh. That move looks more and more unnecessary the more that you look at it, in my opinion. Like the more that you it's like, okay, if you're going to trade Gensel, then just go full-blown rebuild. But they can't because they're keeping Sidney Crosby. They want to respect him and blah, blah, blah. But now that, like, the more that trade ages, the more unnecessary that trade seems. And Michael Bunting, who they got for Gensel, Michael Bunting's been a healthy scratch multiple times this year. So I don't know. Is there anything else that you want to hit before we move on to the games tonight? Is there any other topic? There's only 2. We got a couple minutes. Is there anything else that we've left out that you want to hit before we get to the games tonight?
No, just we're talking about the Penguins at this point. We're going to have to talk about them again, and I just have nothing good to say about that team. So we can just jump right into it because they are playing the Winnipeg Jets today.
Yeah, they are, and you did tee up the segue beautiful, but I'm going to chop it right down, and you did a great job, but I am going to remove your great job and do a bad job myself and just quickly air out my frustrations once again with the Ottawa Senators. I have to do this really quickly. I'll keep it really short. We talked about the Atlantic, okay? We talked about how Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa, Montreal, taking out Montreal, but, you know, Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa, like those 3 teams specifically, we have to talk about how we've been waiting for these 3 teams to step up for so long, and none of these 3 teams want it. Ottawa, I would say, in my opinion, after watching Detroit, Buffalo, we get to watch Buffalo tonight because they'll be the only game on. Ottawa is the one team out of those 3 that I think have the best chance of making it to the playoffs. I really like what I've seen from the Ottawa Senators for certain portions of this season. However, the Edmonton Oilers lose 3-0. I said this at the beginning of the show. The Edmonton Oilers lose 3-0 to Montreal. They come to your barn the next night, and you don't even show up for it. Like the Oilers win 5-2. Furthermore, you are tied 1-1 with the Edmonton Oilers. You took a penalty to be down a man, a 5-on-4 penalty. And then one of your most veteran, established leaders, proven leaders on your team, Claude Giroux, who I love, by the way, and I love that he signed there, and I love that he's still there. I think it's awesome that he chose Ottawa to be. I love it. But he takes at the very beginning of a penalty, he takes a face-off and goes low and moves the puck with his glove and gets a delay of game penalty, immediately putting you on a 5-on-3 penalty kill, where Connor McDavid promptly scores, and the Edmonton Oilers never look back. That was the first of 2 goals that he scored in the first period. It's those little things that happen, and you wouldn't expect it from Claude Giroux. And by and large, it's not his fault that this team is what it is. But it's those little mistakes where it's like, when are you guys going to be a real hockey team? Like, when is this going to happen? And then we have a couple of days off. The Leafs beat Vegas 3-0 on Wednesday night. You get Vegas in your barn. And yes, it was a great game. I thought Samsonov, the goalie for Vegas, played really, really well, stopped 38 shots. But still, you lose to a Vegas team that just played. It's so frustrating, man. And the more I look at it, Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa. Yes, technically Ottawa is below all of them in the standings, but am I going to have to talk about these 3 teams again for another full season and none of them finally make the jump to the playoffs? It's so frustrating.
Yeah. Your team's Ottawa. My team was Detroit. I thought Detroit was taking that lead this year.
Yeah.
Especially since they were so close last year and, I mean, pretty much just shot themselves in the foot. Otherwise, they would have been in the playoffs. But we've talked about it a bunch in this show, directly and indirectly. I guess we're going to talk about it again. winning is a culture, and there's these teams, those three teams, they abandoned it for various reasons, and they have not found it again. And there's a bunch of other teams in the National Hockey League in the year of our Lord 2024 that do not know how to win. And bad teams find ways to lose games.
Well, and I think it's a great point, man. Ottawa has a new owner, a new GM, a new coach, same players, right? And maybe that's just it. But all right, an hour and 10 minutes. We said not much to talk about, and we did an excellent job. Shout out to Joe. Thanks for the robust answers to the questions, by the way. You guys are my regular people to go to when I'm not watching Messier or PK Subban. I appreciate you. To be named with those names, what an honor, and I'll take it.
My captain. Oh, captain.
Your captain.
My captain.
PK Subban, this is an off-season conversation or maybe like a Christmas break conversation, but PK Subban, one of the best players ever to not win the Stanley Cup. I think he can be one of those in that conversation, right?
No.
You don't think
one of
so?
the best ever? One of the best ever?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying top 3, but you can put him a top 20. I don't know. Just what comes to mind. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll have to dive into it.
I feel like there's a ton of incredible players who didn't win the Cup.
That's fair. Including my captain.
Yeah,
Never got there.
I was going to say, I can name a lot of people off the top of my head. Henrik Lundqvist, Rick Nash. Can I just name like all the Rangers from 10 years ago that didn't go to Tampa?
Point proven. With that, let's move into the games of the night. We'll go back to Andre's wonderful segue that I squashed rather quickly. The Winnipeg Jets are in Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. That puck drop is in an hour and 40 minutes. Pittsburgh plus 150 at home. The Jets minus 182 on the road. Minus 1.5 are the Jets at plus 138. Plus 1.5 are the Pittsburgh Penguins at minus 170. The over 6.5 at minus 102. And the under is minus 120. Andre, what do you got, man? Winnipeg, Pittsburgh. What do you got?
Yeah. One of these teams averages the most goals per game, and the other allows the most goals per game. One of these teams is at the very top of the NHL standings, and the other team is at the very bottom of their division, only ahead of 2 teams in their conference. I expect the Winnipeg Jets to score 6 goals tonight. So yes. That right there, it should pretty much tell you everywhere I'm going with this bet. Minus 1.5. I love it. For 6 goals. It's going to be hard to take that under if I'm expecting 6 from one team. It's just a complete mismatch. And you're telling me, a Winnipeg team that scored 6 against the Panthers and 6 against the Rangers and 4 against the Stars and 7 against the Lightning. Maybe not the Lightning anymore. That's a different discussion. But 4 against the Leafs. Like they're lighting the lamp a ton against good teams, against strong defensive teams, against great goalies. And now you're giving them Pittsburgh. I'm scared to look at the goalie because I see Tristan Jarry. It's a wrap. But yeah,
is he?
I'm seeing Tristan Jarry. So
I am too. Confirmed by Daily Faceoff, Tristan Jarry.
It's a wrap. Yeah, Jets 6+ goals in this game. I have to find their team prop now for goals, but I'm taking the puck line. I'm taking the over. Team total over 5.5 goals plus 410. It's free money. It's free money.
Is that over 4.5?
If you want to be safe, that's over 5.5. Over 4.5.
5.5. Okay.
4.5 plus 195. That's a bit safer. It's still a good value. But this high scoring team in the league, a team allowing the most goals per game in the league, a team allowing the most goals per game in the league, starting a goalie who has been awful. 863 save percentage, 472 goals against average. Had a couple good starts in the AHL, then fell apart, and that's when they decided to promote him. So, yeah. Bet against the
Yeah.
Richie Bear tonight.
Sorry, bro. Go ahead.
That's all. Bet against Jari.
Yeah, dude, I'm right there with you, man. Winnipeg Jet. Like I'll say this, we see this all the time. I'm just gonna look up if tomorrow, since it's up here, if tomorrow we have any examples of this. But we see this all the time. Okay, so Carolina is playing the Columbus Blue Jackets tomorrow night. Okay, Carolina -1.5 is -102. What am I missing here? And this is another thing where Vegas is doing something and you either take notice and respect it or ignore it and go full steam ahead. And I'm doing the latter. Why is Winnipeg -1.5 plus 138? Both Winnipeg and Carolina are on the road. Like, what? Is Columbus's goaltending that much worse than like Pittsburgh? Like, what am I missing here?
Columbus has been a better team.
Right.
It's Crosby tax, man.
I guess. I'll take the plus 138, and if that's Vegas warning me, then I'm ignoring you. This is what I do. I ignore very logical warnings to not make a mistake, and I just do what I want to do. And I want to bet -1.5 tonight at plus 138. I will say, as far as the props go, and I've been doing pretty well with my prop predictions, may I say. Kyle Connor, plus 120. Mark Scheifele, fresh off a hat trick, plus 195. The second most hat tricks in Winnipeg Jets history, by the way, with 9. And that's with names like Dale Hawerchuk, Teemu Selanne, some really, really good players. I always forget that Teemu Selanne played for Winnipeg, but some really good names there. And then, of course, I know that you hate this, but you know what? You got to do what you got to do. Sidney Crosby still stuck at 599 goals in his career, and I would love to see it tonight. Plus 185 for Crosby to score. But I'm right there with you, man. As far as the total goes, I mean, I'm not doing a total. You make a very good point with the over, but you made another good point that's actually making me stay away from this entirely. Pittsburgh might not score. I don't know. Like, I'm just going to take the -1.5, and I'll be happy with that.
Fair enough. I can't fault that.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. Only 2 games on, and I just want to say congratulations to the NHL. You have only 2 games on tonight, and they won't overlap each other. What a beautiful thing. We've seen this so many times where there's only 2 games on, and they're on at 8 and 8:30. And you did the right thing tonight, and you have 1 game at 7, 1 game at 10. It's perfect. 7-10 and 10-10 if you want to be super specific about it. The Buffalo Sabres are in Anaheim, and I am weirdly excited for this game. I don't really know why, but I'm actually really looking forward to this game. Buffalo Sabres are -1. It was -154 an hour and a half ago when I punched this in. An hour and a half later, the Buffalo Sabres are -150 or 176. 176 in Anaheim. The Anaheim Ducks are plus 146. Another case of the what am I missings? I don't know. We'll see. -1.5 for Buffalo is plus 138. Plus 1.5 for Anaheim is -170. To my point earlier, if Winnipeg is -1.5 plus 138 against Pittsburgh, and Buffalo is plus 138 for -1.5 against Anaheim, that's not the same. I don't understand that one entirely. plus 146, plus 1.5 for Anaheim is minus 170. The over is 6.5 at plus 106, and the under is minus 130. John Gibson in net tonight for Anaheim. He's played really well since coming back. And Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is in net for the Buffalo Sabres. What do you got, man? Anaheim, Buffalo.
Yeah, I've been feeling this Ducks team for, honestly, I'd say like 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
I feel like they've been competitive. They've been playing well. The results back that up. They've won 4 of 5. Really impressive win in Dallas a few days ago. Next night in Chicago, beat the Blackhawks. Not that that's a good win, but back-to-back to sweep it. That's what good teams do. Their only loss in this 5-game stretch was by 1 goal to the Vegas Golden Knights. Nothing to be ashamed about. I like the Ducks here, especially at home. The Sabres, they don't really string together wins. That's not what we're seeing from them this season. They just shut out the Kings. Kudos to them, like 1-0 win. I guess a good team on the road, but game before that, they got pumped by Philly. They gave up 7 goals to Montreal not that long ago. They're just so inconsistent, and it feels like coming off a win, not really like traveling or having to lock back in. They just kind of stayed in SoCal. Whereas the Ducks, they return home. They've got some momentum on their side. Young team playing well. I'm going to ride with it. I'm going to roll with it. So plus 146. I'm taking the Ducks all the way in this one. I like what they're doing. They've won 3 in a row. They're playing pretty solidly defensively. And this Sabres team, they're prone to giving up goals. And after just shutting out the Kings, I don't think they're going to have another strong performance in them. We're not seeing that from them this season, where they just string together, good performances. So Ducks plus 146.
Yeah, man, this is a very Buffalo Sabres thing to do, and this isn't trying to be mean or disrespectful. But listen, man, as much as I have a distaste for the Los Angeles Kings, they've had a really good start to the year. There's no denying it. They overcame a crazy 7-game road trip to start the year, and they're right up there at the top of the division. And Buffalo went in there, shut them out 1-0, and played a really, really good game. And it would absolutely be on par for the Buffalo Sabres to follow up a great game against a division-leading team to an absolute stinker against the Anaheim Ducks. That's just kind of what happens here. And that's meant not to be disrespectful to Anaheim either, because Anaheim, like you said, man, they've been playing some good hockey, bro. And I've said this a couple times. We both have. Their goaltending is terrific right now. John Gibson's only played a handful of games, but he's been really good since coming back to the lineup. And he's the one playing tonight. I know Lucas Dostal is not playing tonight, but he's played really well as well to start the year. And like Anaheim's had just some really good stretches, and they've been playing some good hockey. So I'm right there with you. I'm taking the Anaheim Ducks as well, plus 146 all day long. That line moved so much so quickly that it does worry me a little bit, if I'll be honest with you. Like, Buffalo should not be minus 176 favorites against anybody. They just shouldn't. So for that large of a swing, it does have my attention, but I'm still, much like the minus 1.5 for Winnipeg, I'm going to go full steam ahead with the Anaheim Ducks. What I will say, Troy Terry now he only has 12 points, but 6 goals on the year. For him to score tonight is plus 240. I love that. JJ Peterka for Buffalo Sabres. I'm always pumping his goal scoring prop at plus 180. Along with the other night, a really, really good goal, Leo Carlsson. High hopes for him in Anaheim. He's been playing very well this year, having a great start. He is plus 340 to score tonight, and he has 6 goals on the year. So I really like that one as well. That's probably my long shot bet of the night. Leo Carlsson at plus 340 for him to put a puck in the net. Vetrano, he only has 2 goals on the year, and you expect him to come around at some point. He's plus 200 to score as well. All right, moving on to our best bets. We just want to say a quick shout out to everybody watching live. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you, whether you're watching on my Twitter, which has a new name, by the way, Solder on Pucks. I changed my Twitter handle. We'll see. Maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe it is. I have like 600 followers, so I don't think it'll really matter that much. But that is my new Twitter handle. So whether you're watching on my Twitter or whether you're watching on Total Apex Sports, which the majority of you are, or whether you're watching on YouTube, however you are watching, we appreciate it very, very much. Moving on to our best bets brought to you by First Round Collectibles. Right now with our promo code Sports Addict, get 10% off whatever sports card you want in the entire First Round Collectibles store. They have an ongoing sale up to 50% off dozens and dozens of cards. And with our promo code Sports Addict, not only do you get 10% off of regular price items, but sales items as well. Go to firstroundcollectibles.com today. Use promo code Sports Addict for 10% off your order. That's the number 1, STRoundcollectibles.com, firstroundcollectibles.com. First Round Collectibles, sports cards for sports fans. Andre, what do you got, bro? Best bet on a 2-game slate on a Friday night.
Yeah, mine's gonna be from the first game. I'm just trying to decide if it's gonna be the over or the puck line. I think I'm just gonna make it the over. Nice and simple.
From which game, sorry?
Jets, Penguins.
Okay.
Just make it the over.
Okay.
Based on the strength of Winnipeg alone. If
so
they score 1 or 2, that's fine.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So is it safe to say that either Winnipeg -1.5 or Anaheim money line will be our family play?
Yeah.
No matter what I pick. Is that safe to say?
It is safe to say.
Okay. So I'll take it doesn't really matter then, because either way they're both be taken. I'll take Anaheim plus 146. I already laid out my case. And -1.5 Jets. That'll be our family play, plus 138.
I'm down.
Love it. So you're taking the over 6.5 in Winnipeg Jets, Winnipeg Pittsburgh, and we're taking Winnipeg -1.5 and taking the Anaheim money line on DraftKings. What do you got as odds for this parlay?
Yeah, over 6 is -120. Jets puck line is plus 136. Ducks money line is plus 145. I have 772.
Oh, dude. Usually we're really close. Usually it's like just within a few numbers. It's the Jets Penguins over on FanDuel, because yours is over 6.5, right?
-6, even.
Oh, it's 6 even. Okay.
Yeah.
Over 6.5 is -102.
Ooh.
And that's what did it here. Over 6.5 is -102. -1.5 for the Jets is plus 138. And that over, of course, is for the Winnipeg game. And the money line for Anaheim is plus 146. So on FanDuel, it is plus 971 on FanDuel. So
that's a nice win.
It's usually not that substantial. But again, FanDuel, I'm pumping your tires every night on this show, man. And I'm sure that you really care. So anyway, mixing up my words. There you go. Winnipeg puck line, Winnipeg Penguins over, and Anaheim plus 146. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it very, very much. I always say whether you're watching live or later, but the games start in an hour. So, hey, if you're watching this between now and 7 o'clock, we appreciate that. Head over to firstroundcollectibles.com. Use promo code SportsAddict for 10% off your order. TotalApexSports.com. Lots of great sports content, hockey, football, basketball, baseball, any sport you want. They have it at TotalApexSports.com. What else? I feel like I'm missing something. feel like we're good, right? That's all the reads. That's all the info. Nothing really left. Crazy day tomorrow. Lots to talk about on Monday. So then have an excellent rest of your night. I might come back later in the night and talk some puck. I don't know if Andre will. We'll see what happens. My son wants my attention, so you guys will no longer have it. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you next time.